Are you suffering from a serious life-threatening illness? Has your doctor told you you're probably going to die? My name is Dr. Donald Trump, and I have helped millions of patients with conditions just like yours. Cancer, heart disease, ALS, you name it. Conditions your doctor said were untreatable. I've seen them all, and I fixed them all. I use an advanced technique that the cheating medical establishment don't want you to know about. The results are, frankly, incredible. Nobody gets results like this. They're the greatest results.
They gave me 6 weeks to live, but then I called the hotline and was healed entirely through the phone.
I was clinically brain dead, and my wife was about to pull the plug when the doctor saved my life.
If you or someone you love is suffering, don't wait. Don't let the corrupt medical establishment tell you what's possible. Call 1-900-NOT-JESUS today. Let's make your health great again. Are you...
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Logic. Hope you all had a phenomenal day as we reassemble for another episode of the following program. I have a different kind of show than I've been doing much of late. Tonight's going to be a little bit more of a legal show, but with stories. So don't worry, there's going to be story time. And it's based on a situation that unfolded today, specifically an arrest warrant being issued for an ICE agent for allegedly illegal conduct and assaulting someone in the course of, well, while they were on the job in Minnesota. And I want to, first and foremost, I want to thank Jim Satala from Jim Tells You for alerting me to this story, because this is something that I think is very interesting and something I think you should be aware of. And it really calls to mind, is this something that they actually have a legal leg to stand on? Is this actually legally justifiable? I know that we are all very cynical about the legitimacy of our judicial system, and that's, no one is more to blame for that than our federal court and district court judges specifically themselves. That we're all very cynical, but we're all very cynical about juries. We're very cynical about that they're very politically motivated these days, and we don't feel as if the law ever actually has a chance. And all too often, our cynicisms are proven correct. However, I think that it's important to understand that sometimes, sometimes the law actually prevails as intended. And I think that the law in this case is actually something very interesting. A lot of people are talking about the supremacy clause. People are talking about, can they do this? Do they have a right to do this? Is he going to be railroaded because it's in Minnesota? These are all legitimate questions to ask. And my objective tonight is I want to try and answer them for you. Now, I have a goal up, and that goal is that since this is a legal show, I called Jim before the show. He normally joins me on Thursday nights. And I said to him, hey, look, this is a very law-heavy show tonight. Like, I plan on investing a lot of time talking about how the law operates in this area and going through the actual complaint against the ICE agent so that we can sort of assess where the law, where a fair judge is likely to land and what we should anticipate and how we should anticipate this case unfolding based on the complaint, based on the presiding law, assuming everything is, all things being equal, and that the judges are actually applying the law fairly. So I'm going to give you my assessment, and my assessment is really, it's not that, I think this is not nearly as simple as a lot of people on the right tend to think. If you think that the simple answer is supremacy clause, he walks free, I'm telling you now, it's possible you're mistaken. It really depends a lot on what's written in this complaint. So I want to break that down for you. I'm going to break down for you the charges as listed by the county attorney, who's clearly a DEI hire. She definitely has an agenda. I'm not going to dispute that. But I'm going to try and break down what the law is. We're going to look at the complaint. I'm going to try and come to you with my assessment as to whether a fair judge would allow this case to proceed or would kick it out based on the supremacy clause. So if you're unfamiliar with the term supremacy clause, that's a reference to the fact that federal law overrides state law. So if he's acting in accordance with his federal duties, in that case, you can't, the state law can't be binding on him, and he can't be punished for performing his federal duties. So that's what I'm going to be breaking down for you during the course of the show. I do have a goal up tonight. I'll be frank with you, I don't expect to reach the goal. The reason I don't expect to reach the goal is because I think that law shows tend to be less interactive. I know that. But maybe we will. Our goal is our normal goal of 15 super chats, $10 or more. That could be Rumble Rants, it could be super chats, it could be shekels, it could be, I don't know, yen. I'll take yen. Give me yen. I'm good with yen. We're good with yen. Whatever it is, in quantities of $10 or more, we get 15 of those. And what are we going to get for that? We will get Saturday Night Show with Jim Satala. I'm going to make it up to Jim. I'm going to bring him in here, assuming Jim is available. If he's not available, so I'll bring him in here a different night next week, because I do want to make it up to him. I felt very bad about like basically telling him I don't think it's the right. I was like, you're welcome to join. I just don't know what you're going to be able to add, because this is very much a law intensive show tonight. So, and he's like, okay, look, I'm not going to, if I can't add, I don't want to jump in there. I think he's probably in the audience. So that's what he said. He was going to try and pop in and watch. So yeah, if we hit our goal, great. And I'll be here Saturday night. If not, probably not. I'm not saying definitely not, but probably not. Chances are very slim. So with that in mind, let's start off by assessing the claims that are being made by Hennepin County. This is the post that Jim shared with me. It says, happening now, Mary Moriarty has issued 2 warrants to arrest 2 ICE agents. It's actually just 1 ICE agent, it's not 2, for assault, and is claiming they can be arrested anywhere in the country. If it's a valid arrest warrant, theoretically, she's going to start a civil war with these warrants. And that's another interesting element to discuss. Like, is this something that would potentially can cause a civil, a real friction? I mean, it's a little bit hyperbole. I don't think any of you are watching right now being like, oh my God, they're arresting an ICE agent. Where's my gun? Fortunately, there might be a couple of you out there who are saying that, 1 or 2, but I don't think you're going to form enough of an army together, and you're just going to look kind of silly. And you'll probably end up getting drunk and shooting raccoons, and RFK Jr. will drive up and carve them up and take them home. So, but as far as this actual civil war, I don't think that's going to happen. But when you're looking to sling X posts, you got to make it exciting. Minnesota really wants to go to war with the federal government under President Trump. Bring it. Here is her statement. This is Mary Moriarty. It's like almost like the names. It's like God is laughing. He's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to name this one Moriarty, just so you know she's evil. Just so you have no doubt. I'm going to name her Professor Mary Moriarty. All right, here we go. I often say about these people, you can tell, much like nature makes like really dangerous frogs green, you take one look at this Karen and you're just like, I know what's coming. I know what's coming. A little buzz cut going on there. This is not a woman who had a happy life.
Mary Moriarty. Today, our office has charged Gregory Donnell Morgan, an Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agent, with 2 counts of second-degree assault. There is now a warrant for Mr. Morgan's arrest, which allows law enforcement to arrest him anywhere in the country. Before I address the details of this case, I want to take a moment to talk about the timeline and why a charging decision was reached earlier in this case than in the shooting of Julio Sosa Solis and the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good.
So unfortunately, we can't go after Alex Preddy and Renee Good. We don't really have basis because the law doesn't really help us there. But we think we got one. And we're very excited about that.
I know the community is following the decisions of this office very closely, and I want to be transparent on why these situations are developing at different speeds. This case followed the typical investigation and submission process for cases coming to our office. The Minnesota State Patrol received a 911 call from the victims, who had a gun pointed at them by the driver of a vehicle who pulled up next to them illegally on the shoulder.
Now, all of this is basically going to be designed to portray the ICE agents in as negative a fashion as possible, which is what you would expect because that's the adverse side in this case. So in general, whenever they're going after anyone, they're gonna paint it in a light most favorable to them. But even when she's telling the story, you're just like, okay. You can almost picture the scene yourselves as she's about to describe what happened. But we're going to be going through the actual complaint itself. But this is an overview.
Pointed at them by the driver of a vehicle who pulled up next to them illegally on the shoulder. The State Patrol was able to investigate thoroughly, identify Mr. Morgan, and conduct an interview with him at the Whipple building. After finalizing the investigative case file, the State Patrol submitted the case to our office for potential charges. Virtually none of the obstacles around evidence collection that exist for the January shootings exist in this case.
Meaning, we have a lot of obstacles going after the folks who killed Good and Pretty, but we don't have those obstacles here.
On February 5th, Mr. Morgan was driving illegally on the shoulder of eastbound Highway 62, or the Crosstown, just past the Portland Avenue exit, appearing to attempt to bypass slower traffic. The victim who was driving briefly moved their vehicle into the shoulder to slow him down.
What? This is the part that you're just like, that's okay? That's okay? Really? That's okay? All right, we're just going to walk on past that. Joey, I need you on Saturday night laying in a corner crying, saying, where's my Joe? Is not how I want to spend my weekend. I don't know. Maybe you can inspire folk. I don't know. I'll give added credit tonight because I know it's a law show which doesn't tend to generate as much chatter. I know that and I appreciate that. I recognize that. I'll give added credit tonight. I'll give full credit to super chats. I mean, if we get like a $20 super chat, I'll count as a double. Okay? I'll count as a double. So this way, like it'll just be like, look, basically, if I'll count those as I'll give full credit there. Okay? I'm trying to be fair. Trying to do what we can. I should open up. Take a peek in. Take a pin in. On Dog Digger saying, okay, Joey are called. Fine. We peeked in over there. We've officially peeked in on the ghetto.
Mr. Morgan was driving a rented SUV with no markings or other features to indicate that it was an ICE vehicle.
You know, what makes you in the right to basically say, I'm blocking this vehicle? You're not allowed to be there either.
After the victim's vehicle moved back into the legal lane, Mr. Morgan sped up to pull alongside the victim's vehicle. Mr. Morgan then visibly slowed his vehicle to match the pace of the victim's vehicle, opened his window, and pointed his duty weapon directly at both victims in the other vehicle while continuing to drive illegally on the shoulder.
So he allegedly basically pulled up alongside them and pulled his gun on them while he's driving.
Both the driver and the passenger in the victim's vehicle felt threatened by Mr. Morgan's actions. The driver called 911 while the passenger began to video the SUV when it pulled into the lane in front of them. On February 6th, State Patrol investigators conducted a voluntary interview with Mr. Morgan and his partner, who had been in the back seat of the rented SUV at the time of the incident. During the interview, Mr. Morgan admitted that he was driving the rented SUV, and he and his partner were headed to the Whipple building to end their shift.
So he admitted he drove in the lane. He just didn't admit that he actually pulled a gun, that's the actual assault.
Additionally, he admitted that he drew his firearm
Okay.
after the victim's vehicle had already rejoined the normal flow of traffic,
Well, that's not a good thing to say. That's not something you want to say. Okay.
corroborating details from interviews with the victim. The State Patrol retrieved video of the incident from highway cameras, which is also consistent with the details of the interviews. We have charged Mr. Morgan with 2 counts of second-degree assault, 1 count for each victim, for threatening the victims with a dangerous weapon. Second-degree assault with a gun has a presumptive sentence of 36 months in prison. Mr. Morgan's conduct was extremely dangerous. Driving while pointing a weapon out of your moving vehicle at the victims who were in another moving vehicle could have led to yet another disastrous incident in a community that has already suffered too many.
Oh, stop with your whole suffer too many. Oh, we're suffering. You're suffering because you have all them fraudsters there, because you're trying to protect illegal aliens. That's why. Suffering. That's such suffering. Oh, the horrors.
I want to thank the Minnesota State Patrol for their investigative work on this case and for submitting it to our office for charging consideration.
Okay. Before we go any further, I want to just go on the record so no one mistakenly takes out of context anything I'm going to say during the course of tonight's stream. Do not get me wrong. This woman is a lunatic. She's an agenda-driven lunatic. And that she's going after this guy, I have no doubt whatsoever that she's going after him specifically because he's an ICE agent and she hates ICE. Okay? So this is targeted, weaponized law enforcement. I am not disputing that. That's my personal opinion. I can't prove it. My personal opinion, given the haircut, given the tone, given the fact that she's making a whole statement here, everything about this, just why are you even making this whole statement? Like, why are you coming with a press conference? This feels as if she's very proud of herself that she's going after an ICE agent. Okay? So do I think that she's a vile, disgusting, awful, terrible human being? Of course. Of course she is. Yeah, she's terrible. I think she's a miserable person and she wants to make other people miserable while finding some way of having people like her. And that this is her method of trying to accomplish that. That's what I think of this Mary Moriarty. Okay? I think she's a terrible person. But that's not really what we're called upon to assess now, right? What we're called upon to assess is, does her perspective on the law have genuine legal merit or not? And that's what I'm going to try and break down for you during the course of tonight's show. In order to understand this, before we actually go through the complaint, it's helpful that when we're reviewing the complaint, we need to know the law. How does the law work here? You probably heard of the Supremacy Clause and understand that, it seems like it protects a federal agent from being prosecuted by the state. But it's not a blanket protection. If you think it's a blanket protection, you're mistaken. That's just not the way the law operates. I didn't write the law. And frankly, the law actually on this came about in 1890, a case called In Re Nagel, which happens to be a very, very interesting case. Factually, it's an interesting story. So interesting that someone actually made a video breaking down, a 2-minute video I'm going to share with you here as to what happened with the In Re Nagel case. So let's check out so we can understand. This is the case. This is the fact background that led to the law that we have with respect to states being able to charge federal agents.
1800s frontier America. No tale of late 1800s frontier America was complete without a stubborn dame, hot-headed lowlife, and heroic lawmen. When a federal marshal shot a man to save the life of a Supreme Court justice, the marshal's arrest spurred a debate over federal power. The United States.
So understand this. He shot someone, this marshal shot someone while trying to protect a Supreme Court justice from what he thought was potentially lethal attack.
State Supreme Court secured the marshal's release and helped tame the Wild West in Re Nagel. During this period, United States Supreme Court justices traveled to assigned circuits to hear cases. Justice Field traveled to California and heard an oral argument involving Sarah Terry. Sarah and her husband David attended the proceedings. Justice Field announced the court's decision, which was against Sarah. The Terrys lost their
So Supreme Court justice, this is back in the day, the reason they're called circuit courts is because the Supreme Court justices used to get on their horse and buggy and go around the country and actually decide cases. That's what they did. So he got on his horse and buggy, went out to California and decided a case, and he told Sarah Terry, "You lost." She was not happy with his decision.
tempers. Sarah accused Justice Field of accepting a bribe. David punched the marshal who tried to subdue him. The Terrys served prison sentences for contempt. Both frequently and openly discussed harming Justice Field, including killing him. Because of the Terrys' threats, the United States Attorney General ordered the protection of a marshal. Marshal Neagle was appointed and accompanied Justice Field as he traveled within California hearing cases.
So in case he just walked in, we got this Supreme Court justice threatened by a couple of people he threw in jail for contempt of court. They're saying they're going to kill him. They say, okay, let's give you Neagle, and Neagle's going to protect you. He's going to go traveling with you and make sure that you don't get, killed.
After the Terrys' release from prison, they followed Justice Field and boarded the same train. The Terrys found Justice Field and Neagle in the dining car. David hit Justice Field in the face twice. Neagle shouted at David to stop. Neagle believed David began to reach for a weapon, so Neagle shot and killed David. California authorities charged Neagle with murder and jailed him. Neagle petitioned for a writ of habeas corpus, seeking his release because he acted as a marshal when he killed David Terry. The circuit court ordered Neagle's release. The sheriff holding him appealed to the United States Supreme Court. Justice Field recused himself from the decision.
But what was the decision? So now we have the factual background. What was the logic that ended up, because this ends up becoming the landmark case in this area of law. So what is the decision? What are the key elements here? And basically, I'm not going to go all the way through in Ray Nagel because I like you and I don't want to make you depressed. And we're not in law school. So I'm aware of that. And this case is how many pages? Okay, this is a decision. It goes on for a minute, 98 pages long. And the way that they used to write Supreme Court decisions back in the late 19th century is very different from the way it is now. It's like a whole morass of information. It's just not as structured as it is today. They are far better writers than what we see today, sadly. We don't have the same caliber of writing. But it's not as easy to just go through it and digest it. It's much, much more challenging. And this is a podcast. This is not a law class, so I'm not going to be burdening you with that. However, we can focus on the paragraph here, which becomes the essential talking point for courts when they're assessing this, when they're trying to assess the law about whether a supremacy clause is going to protect a federal agent who's acting in the scope of their duties. Specifically, this section here. On page 75 of the decision, this is 135 U.S. 1, page 75 thereof. Yes, 75 pages in is where you get the rule of law from, which is, that's a mouthful. If the prisoner is held in a state court to answer for an act which he was authorized to do by the law of the United States, which it was his duty to do as a marshal of the United States, and if in doing that act he did no more than what was necessary and proper for him to do, he cannot be guilty of a crime under the law of the state of California. What does this mean? Well, if you break down this key sentence here from this decision and the way it's been broken down by courts over the ensuing 135 years, well, where we come is if the prisoner, which is the federal agent, it now is called to a state court to answer for some action, is charged with a crime, and that action was something he was authorized by law to do on behalf of the United States. So he's working in his capacity. He's authorized. This is a key element. He's authorized to do it because there's really only two key elements. He's got to be authorized to do it, and in this case, the Marshal of the United States, and so he's got to be authorized to do it. And if he did no more than what was necessary and proper for him to do, meaning he was acting in a way that he had to be acting, right? This is something that he had to be doing. So if in fact he's authorized and it's necessary, those are your two key elements, authorized to take the action and it's necessary for the performance of his duties, then and only then will we say he cannot be guilty of a crime under the law of the state of California or any other state. In this case, it's California, but that's basically we say the state, any state X cannot charge you. You can't, because he can't be held liable. He's just doing his duty. So that's where the supremacy clause kicks in. This is a logical line to draw. The reason it's a logical line to draw is because if you think about it, if he does something he's not authorized to do, he's never been authorized to do. Let's say you're talking about a postal worker. So now you're an employee of the federal United States, but you're not authorized to shoot people. So you don't want postal workers shooting people. Maybe you did in 1890, but not in 2026. So yeah, that's why going postal is never illegal, because that's not something you're allowed to do, because they're never authorized to kill people. Now, a U.S. Marshal is authorized to kill people in certain circumstances in order to protect the life of a Supreme Court justice, would be one such instance. And if in doing that act, he did no more than what was necessary and proper for him to do, he cannot be, meaning you're doing your act, you were authorized to do this, and you're doing no more than what's necessary for you to do your duties. So even a U.S. Marshal can't go around shooting people. It's got to be that he's trying in good faith to carry out his duties. So, and that makes sense also. We don't want people who are U.S. Marshals just go around shooting people when it's not the performance of their duties, or say, well, I'm on the job now and I hate you, so blam. We don't want that. So this law makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot, it's a nice, healthy line. So but basically what we have to, the key things we need to remember is authorized and necessary, authorized and necessary. Now, when we're looking through the complaints against Nagel, we need to ask ourselves, the actions which he's taking, are they considered authorized and necessary for the performance of his duties as an ICE agent? And you could see scenarios where potentially, what they're describing is, and sometimes where what they're describing may not be. And if it's not authorized and necessary, then a state can charge him. Again, I want to be crystal clear here. That doesn't mean that they're not politically motivated. They almost certainly are politically motivated. It's Minnesota. Everything is crooked in Minnesota. But that doesn't mean that they're not technically within the legal framework that the law is on their side. Doesn't mean, so if an ICE agent oversteps and is doing something that's not part of the performance of their duties, then they don't have the protection of the supremacy clause, even if they're on the clock, even if they're in an ICE vehicle. So, but just so you don't question how twisted this woman is and think I just came to this conclusion on my own. This is Mary Moriarty, just so we get it, just because I just want to pound this home that I know she's twisted, okay? This is the same crazy woman when she was dealing with the notion of trying to arrest this guy who was marking up Tesla cars with his stupid little swastikas, whatever it was. And this is how she handled that scenario.
So diversion is accountability.
She gave him diversion, which basically means you walk, probation.
The case was submitted to us by the police. We did not decline it. We looked at the case. What we really wanted was for the victims.
The way she talks, I always feel very uncomfortable when you hear people that you can hear the liquid in their mouth when they're talking. I just have a real, I feel like a certain revulsion. Like it almost feels like I'm listening to a cow chewing its cud. Like you can hear the moisture. Listen to her. I get. I don't know. Maybe is that snobbish of me? Is it wrong for me to say that? Is that wrong?
We looked at the case. What we really wanted was for the victims in that case to get restitution and for this person to be held accountable. We are accomplishing both of those by requiring him to go through a diversion program and to pay restitution to all 6 victims. What happened to those victims of those Teslas should not have happened. And just like any other property offense, which is one of the lowest level offenses that we have,
i.e., I'm trying to justify why I'm not charging this guy.
We seek to hold people accountable in a way that will be consistent with public safety.
Public safety. Like, you're such a schmuck.
And diversion is a proven way of doing that.
Yeah, okay. Never trust a woman who wears a men's blazer. I'll say it. This is a walking mess, this woman. So she's like, okay, today I gotta wear a top that matches my funky looking glasses. I don't know what the hell's happening with this woman. So yeah, when it comes to folks who are crazy leftists, let's basically let them walk. When it comes to people who are ICE agents, let's try to hit them with the max, because she's a crazy lefty lunatic. We don't dispute that. But we now understand the law, and we understand where she could potentially be in the right. So in order to assess whether or not she is in the right, we sort of need to take some time to actually see what the complaint says, right? Because only then will we know. Only then will we know. Here is your complaint. State of Minnesota versus Gregory Donald Morgan Jr. Date of birth 2/22/1991. The complainant. We're gonna be able to. I'm gonna be able to do this one. We'll do draw. We'll do draw. All right, complainant submits this complaint to the court and states that there's probable cause to believe defendant committed the following offenses. So we're going with 609.222.1 and 609.115A. Maximum sentence 7 years and/or $4,200 to $14,000. She says it's 36 months. Maximum sentence 7 years. Charge assault. All right. That on or about February 5th, 2026, in Hennepin County, Minnesota, Gregory Donald Morgan assaulted victim 2 while using a firearm. Complainant has investigated the facts and circumstances of the offense and believes the following establishes probable cause. On Thursday, February 5th, 2026, at 4:22 in the afternoon, the Minnesota State Patrol received a report that the driver of a Ford Expedition had just pointed a gun. So that's not good. Pointed a gun at the occupants of another vehicle, identified as victim 1 and 2 on eastbound Minnesota State Highway 62 at the interchange with Interstate Highway 35 West, located at Hennepin County, Minnesota. Troopers investigated the incident, spoke to both victims, identified the gunman as George Donald Morgan, hereinafter the defendant. At the time of the incident, the defendant was employed as a federal agent with ICE, specifically their removal. So that's why we went after him, in case you were wondering. Location of the incident, because let's face it, you think they're going after any other criminals as hard? Any other criminals as hard? Anyone. Based on the statements from victims 1 and 2 and a review of traffic camera video, troopers determined that the incident occurred at the interchange of Highway 62 and I-35 West. Troopers are aware that that interchange, eastbound Highway 62, reduces from 2 lanes to 1 lane. So this becomes 1 lane for a brief distance until traffic from southbound I-35 merges onto Highway 62 and adds a 2nd lane. Because of the large volume of vehicles that move through this interchange, especially during rush hour times, coupled with the reduction down to 1 lane, vehicles often must queue and reduce speed because there's this little bottlenecking thing that's happening there as they proceed, resulting in slower moving, congested commuter traffic. In the eastbound direction, the right shoulder is clearly marked as not legal lane of traffic. They're making a very big deal about this, the fact that that lane he was in was not legal. Which makes me curious. Why are you making such a big stink about the fact that it was in a lane that was not a lane that was legal to drive in? It makes me very suspicious. It makes me suspicious that there has to be some sort of predicate here, where they're trying to use that to say that he's not in the course, he is not authorized to do that. So that while he's there in the lane, he's not in the course of his duties. I don't know. I'm not sure why they keep coming. They make a very big stink about the fact that he's driving on the shoulder. You heard her talking about it. You see him, you see the complaint here listing it. The right lane of traffic exits Highway 62. I should really pull up. I haven't pulled up yet. I should really pull up this statute, 609, Minnesota 609.222. Let's see what the elements are. 609.222 and 221. And 222.1. 222.1. This is whoever assaults another with a dangerous weapon may be sentenced to prison for not more than 7 years or the payment of a fine of not more than $14,000 or both. 609.11.5a. Let's see what that is. 609. So that's just a firearm. That's just a firearm enhancement, I think. Anything committed events listed in subdivision 9 in which defendant or an accomplice had possession, use, or brandishing, displaying, threatening with, or otherwise employing a firearm shall be committed to the Commissioner of Corrections for not less than 3 years, nor more than the maximum sentence provided by law. Okay. Let's get back to the complaint. At the time of the incident, the right lane of the traffic exits Highway 62 onto local streets. There are many signs leading up to that point that indicate the right lane must exit and that the traffic continuing the eastbound highway must be in the left lane. So it's not like the point is he was on notice. It was very clear. The solid white lines immediately following the exit show that you can't be driving on the shoulder. Investigators are aware that occasionally at this interchange, a driver will flout the need to merge into one-lane traffic, drive illegally on the right shoulder, pass slower-moving traffic, and then merge later, saving a few seconds on commute while irritating other drivers on the roadway. Let's hear from the statements of the victims. At the time of the incident, victim 1 was driving east on Highway 62 through the above-described I-35 West interchange. 2 was in the front passenger seat. 1 stated that they were queued with other vehicles in the single lane of traffic when they saw a black Ford Expedition approaching from behind, driving illegally on the right shoulder. So victim 1 had to be a jackass and move their car partially onto the shoulder because that's just the type of person victim 1 is. Sorry, I do a little of my own editing when I'm going through these complaints. And so they got basically in front of the Expedition, attempting to cut him off a little bit and block the Expedition driver's effort to bypass traffic unlawfully. Victim 1 was unaware that the driver later identified as defendant was associated with law enforcement agency. He's just a general prick. There was no markings on defendant's vehicle that would identify as law enforcement. The vehicle was not displaying or using lights or sirens. After briefly using the vehicle to attempt to block defendant from using the shoulder, victim 1 returned the vehicle to the legal traffic lane. Defendant continued to travel on the shoulder. So they ended up basically blocking for a little bit and then went back into the lane. And then defendant continued driving on the shoulder, but rather than continue to drive past the victims, he pulled alongside their vehicle, rolled down his window, pointed a black handgun directly at victim 1 and victim 2. Victim 1 had a clear view of the defendant's appearance, saw the defendant was wearing a black t-shirt, and that the gun was pointed directly at their heads. Which I'm not going to deny, that could be scary. Saw that the gun was a Glock or a Sig Sauer handgun with what appeared to be a red dot sight, and noted the defendant yelled something indiscernible, probably like, "You're a jackass." The windows on victim 1's car were closed, and the victims were not able to hear what the defendant was yelling. Victim 1 felt threatened for their safety and immediately called 911 because they're a big tough talker, and then just goes running around screaming. Victim 2 corroborated victim 1's report. Big surprise. Victim 2 was in the front passenger seat and saw the expedition driving on the right shoulder of Highway 62 really, really fast. Oh, are you an expert in assessing speeds of cars that are traveling behind you? Because I doubt you are. Victim 2 said that victim 1 moved the car into the shoulder to slow him down. You see, this I'm telling you right now is crap. That's definitely not true. You don't know how fast he's going. If he was really going that fast, you wouldn't cut in front of him. So I'm telling you right now, victim 2 is a liar. I have no idea whether victim 2 is a man or woman. I have no idea what race, what gender. I can guess that the hair color is ratty. That's my guess. My best guess is ratty. I'm guessing this person is under 30 years old. But that last part I'm least confident about. This is Minnesota. And yeah, there's no way in hell when you're sitting in a passenger seat, you know that someone's driving really, really fast on the shoulder behind you. There's just no way. You wouldn't know. How the hell would you know? I mean, who's sitting in the passenger seat like this the whole time? No one's doing that. So that's what I'm saying. This person's full of crap. This is an outright lie. So what I do know about victim 2 is a liar. By the way, defense counsel will certainly be exploiting that you're full of crap. Assuming this case goes to trial. Victim 2 explained that in response to defendants pulled alongside them, rolled down his window, and pointed his gun straight at victim 2 and victim 1. This caused victim 2 to feel threatened and scared for their safety. As with victim 1, victim 2 was unaware the defendant was federal agent. I don't believe that either. I'm pretty sure they were positive it was federal agent. That's almost certainly why they moved in front of him. Noting that the expedition had no markings to indicate it was being used by law enforcement. Another pet peeve of the left. Victim 2 shared with troopers 2 videos recorded with a cell phone after the defendant pointed his firearm at them. On the videos, victim 1 and victim 2 are driving behind defendant and recording the back of the expedition, which had an identifiable Utah license plate. So they're already like, yeah, you're not from around here. We're going to come after you. Let me catch up on a couple of chats that came in. Whips and leather vibe. I'm also on Locals tonight and I feel naughty. Oh, look at that. JH. I have a feeling this chick likes to wear male genitalia when going into court. Prove me wrong. You can't. You cannot prove it. No one can prove that wrong. Makes sense to me. That's the Eric Swalwell way. Trying to figure things out. You can't prove that she never has. You can't. Can you prove it? I didn't think so. Moriarty and Ricky Cobb, 2024. She hired DC firm to prosecute Minnesota trooper for an on-duty shoot. Of course she did. After the firm declined and she dropped charges, Walls said he was going to take her off the case. She called it a political circus. Look at Jim. coming in here hot with the background on Moriarty. She hired a DC firm to prosecute a Minnesota trooper for an on-duty shoot. She hates cops. That's basically what it is. Thank you for that background. Appreciate you, Jim. The car is packed full of purple hair fatties. Definitely. Definitely. All right, let's get to the statements from these clowns, because we can. Ooh, Rosellian coming on in here hot. Got a bunch of Rosellian here. If you're keeping track, he sent in a 20 and then a 10. So we might hit our goal tonight. Rosellian says, Joe, his problem is going to be he's on the way back and getting off duty. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Federal, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Federal law, according to federal lawyers who told us, protects you in normal course of your duties. I agree with you. When working with you in the federal government, we had to take a yearly training on the Mann Act. This is something he should have known, and this will almost likely go through. From what I'm seeing so far, the officer has potential problems. This is a tough case. It's to knock out. It's a tough case to knock out. So I agree with that's likely where I'm going to end up. I want to read I've never read the complaint. I'm reading for the first time with you. So we'll see what we got, and I'll give you my assessment when I'm done. Statements of defendant, defendant's partner, and defendant's supervisor. Okay, here we go. So let's hear from Morgan himself. State Patrol investigators searched the expedition's license plate and law enforcement databases, determined that it was a rental vehicle, and learned that the vehicle had been leased to a male MVC, who later identified as ICE employee. Troopers accessed license plate reader LPR data, observed the expedition to pass by an LPR camera, the federal Whipple building, recently, recognized that the Whipple building is located on Highway 62. That's what I'm saying. They knew exactly what this was, near the location of the incident, and surmised that MVC might travel back to the Whipple building again on February 6, 2026. Investigators learned that MVC was at the Whipple building, and that while he was with his partner, who was later identified as defendant, investigators made arrangements to speak with MVC and defendant. So MVC is partner of the defendant. During his voluntary interview, defendant admitted that he was driving the expedition at the time of the encounter, and that victims and at the time of the encounter with the victims, and that his partner, MVC, was in the back seat. So he's like, yes, I was the driver. Earlier in the day, he and his partner have been conducting surveillance on behalf of ICE in Minneapolis. So that's part of his duties. But the defendant acknowledged that at the time of the encounter, he was driving to the Whipple building to end his shift and get gas. Okay. These are not helpful. It's hard to say that getting gas is part of the performance of his duties. That's a stretch. During his interview, the defendant made no claim that he was conducting any law enforcement operation or activity or responding to any emergency situation during the incident. Defendant stated that he was driving on the right and that victim 1 was driving on the left. He stated that victim 1 swerved over in front of him and cut him off. Defendant claimed that he feared for his safety and the safety of others. So in response, he pulled alongside. See, saying, I was afraid for myself. This is Morgan saying, I was afraid for myself and also whatever accident this lunatic might cause. In response, he pulled alongside victim 1's vehicle, rolled down his window, drew his firearm, and yelled, "Police, stop." So he thought that this person was just driving recklessly. Okay. He stated he was trying to get victim 1 to back up. The defendant acknowledged that his firearm was a Glock 19 with a laser light, which the defendant had holstered on his right hip at the time of the interview. The defendant stated that after he pulled the gun on victim 1 and victim 2, he got in the front of the vehicle and drove to the Whipple building. So the question now comes, is he authorized for someone, if someone's driving recklessly? Let's assume that the guy was, that the quote unquote victim was drunk driving. Would he be authorized as an ICE agent to, you know, basically tell him to stop? And there's no allegation. I mean, he's saying the guy's driving recklessly. Does he have, I think that's a little bit of a reach for the role of an ICE agent. Trying to be honest. NBC confirmed that he was on the backseat of the Expedition at the time of the incident. The defendant was driving, that they were traveling back to base, last call, and that the Expedition had no markings, decals, or lights to inform others that they were associated with law enforcement. He stated that victim 1's vehicle was in the left lane, stopped in traffic, and the defendant was driving on the right. Victim 1 came out in front of them, requiring the defendant to slow down. In response, the defendant drove further to the right of victim 1, drawing side by side. So he basically is trying to say, look, these guys were being lunatics and getting in our way while we were driving, so we try going around them on the shoulder. Rolled down his window and yelled police. NBC volunteered that by that point, the defendant already had the firearm with the window down. So he basically, as he's pulling up, is brandishing his firearm. Defendant supervisor and assistant field office director from ICE informed investigators that neither defendant nor NBC had reported this incident. This was something that was not a big deal to them. Investigators reviewed the footage from traffic cameras mounted on Highway 62 from the time of the incident. So they've got these traffic cameras, and they're like, let's see what they're telling us. The video shows slow-moving traffic queued in the single lane of eastbound Highway 62 at 4:21:54 p.m. Victim's 1 vehicle comes into view and is seen moving from the single traffic lane across a solid white line and partially onto the right shoulder. So we see them going onto the shoulder. At 4:21:56, defendant's vehicle comes into view. So it's 2 seconds later, right? This is 4:21:54. This is 4:21:56. So 2 seconds later, we can see defendant's vehicle coming into view. It's completely in the shoulder. It appears to be slowing down. Okay. As the video continues, victim 1 remained partially on the shoulder and in front of the defendant until 4:22:01. So it's really like 5 seconds. And it's 7 seconds that they're in there. When victim 1's vehicle returned to the traffic lane and defendant veered further to the right. What do you mean further to the right? I thought they were on the right. And continued to drive fully in the shoulder. So they were not in the shoulder the entire time. They got into the shoulder. This is a little bit more consistent with what the police are saying, right? So because you're saying you drove further to the right onto the shoulder. At that point, defendant had an opportunity to proceed well past the victims or merge behind their vehicle rather than pass or merge. However, defendant positions his vehicle side by side with victim 1's vehicle. Due to the angle of the camera and the distance of the incident, the traffic camera does not capture defendant's gun pointing conduct. But the footage does reveal that the two vehicles remain side by side from approximately 4:22:03 until 4:22:09. So we're talking about 6 seconds. At approximately 4:22:10, defendant accelerated forward past victim 1's vehicle, still driving illegally on the shoulder. Ahead of the defendant, the shoulder came to an end. requiring the defendant to finally merge into the traffic lane at 4:22:29. At that time, the defendant merged directly in front of victim 1's vehicle. At 4:22:50, victim 1 called 911 to report a gun pointing conduct defendant's vehicle, then proceeded east on Highway 62 in direction of the Whipple. Follow-up interview with victim 1. Now that they had a chance to get their story straight. In a follow-up interview with victim 1, investigators were informed that the defendant, after victim 1 was informed the defendant was an ICE agent, victim 1 noted there were no markings on the expedition or defendant's clothing to indicate that the defendant was affiliated with law enforcement. Instead, at the time of the incident, victim 1 was led to believe that there was a crazy person driving down the road aiming guns at people. I don't believe any part of this. So I'm telling you now, before I said victim 2 was a liar, I'm telling you now, victim 1 is a liar. The type of individual that should not be out there, but they are. Yeah, you see that language also consistent with lefty lunatic who doesn't want ICE in their neighborhood. So this is a whole bunch of lefties. I grant you that. A warrant is necessary because there's a substantial likelihood the defendant will fail to respond to a summons because his present location is not reasonably discoverable. So that's why they're asking for a warrant for his arrest. Complainant requests the defendant subject to bail or conditions of release be arrested or that other lawful steps be taken to obtain the defendant's appearance in court or detained if already in custody, pending further proceedings, and said the defendant otherwise be dealt with according to law. Complainant declares under penalty of perjury that everything stated in this document is true and correct. And that's Morgan D. Kuntz. Finding a probable cause for a warrant to the sheriff of the above-named county or other person authorized to execute this warrant, I order in the name of the state of Minnesota, the defendant be apprehended or arrested without delay and execute this nationwide. So we got a warrant for arrest, nationwide manhunt for him. I assume he's probably going to be turned in. Don't think he's going to go on the run. But I never met Morgan, so I don't know. So I'll tell you right now. Let's break down what we know about the law and the statements that we have here that are potentially damning. Let's just break this down for you as to, is this a valid arrest or not? And I'll tell you right now. So if we look at his statements, so he admits that he's driving the car and that he was not he was going to get gas and ending his shift. So he doesn't say he's involved in anything. If we believe this complaint, he doesn't say that he's involved in any sort of, federal activity. That's not helpful. And he said that victim 1 swerved over in front of him and cut him off. Even if he cut him off, do you have a right to pull a gun on him? Someone cuts you off, you have a right to pull a gun on him and brandish a gun at them? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. All of a sudden, some accident happens. God forbid, the gun goes off, and someone gets shot in the face. So, while I think that these defendants are full of crap as far as like what they knew, I think they knew it was an ICE agent, and I think that they were purposefully trying to be dicks to ICE agent, and I also think that they're liars. I think that the admissions that we get from the defendants here are enough to. Because he's, assuming these claims are true, which we don't know if they are, but assuming the complaint is true, which you have to sort of, unless something is clearly refuted, you have to assume that there's truth to it. So he drew his firearm and yelled, "Police, stop." I'm not sure what his authority is. I'm not sure that ICE has authority to do that. Just because someone's swerving in front of you. saying he swerved in front of him and cut him off. He feared for his safety and safety of others. Okay. If you get a jury to accept that, maybe that can be a valid defense. But as far as dismissing the complaint, I don't think that this complaint is going to be dismissed. And my point is, I'm not saying that because, well, it's Minnesota and they just hate cops. I think that most judges would say, we got a lot of questions of fact here. And these are not questions of law. But there's enough here to basically say, if he's not meeting the Nagel standard of that he's trying to perform his duties and that the steps he's taking are necessary. That's what the Nagel standard is. It's necessary to the performance of his duty. I think that there likely will be an application to move the case to federal court. Defense counsel should move to have, once this guy turns himself in, and I don't think he's going to have to face bail. I think that he'll be just like released in Minnesota. I think that it's a state that operates like that. So as far as how I'm projecting this case to proceed, I do think that the officer, if he's not race surrendered himself, will surrender himself. He'll probably, and I think that's, I would be shocked if they hold him. I don't think that should happen. I don't think they'll have the authority to hold him pending trial. I think there'll be an application by defense counsel to move to federal court. Likely that case, now, a lot of judges really enjoy getting a case like this. They might be reluctant to turn it over to federal court, but I think that under the law, it probably should go to federal court for a federal judge to make a decision as to whether or not this is something that supremacy clause would negate. But I think a fair federal judge looking at this, applying the Nagel standard, will say, okay, you tell me. Is this something that seems like, assuming we trust the facts as a verdict in this complaint against him, we don't trust him. Let's assume that Morgan is lying to us, the defendant's lying to us. Is there enough meat on the bone here to say, I don't think he's in the performance of his duties? Doesn't seem like that this is a necessary. It's got to be something that's authorized, due, and necessary for the performance of his duties. I personally don't think it is necessary to the performance of his duties. That, hey, he can't operate as an ICE agent unless he brandishes a weapon. He brandishes his Glock at someone who cuts him off. Like, that's a necessary thing. Do I think that these people are doing it are dicks? Yes. Do I think that they make the world a more dangerous place? Yes. I just don't know I don't know that he even has authority to arrest someone for doing that. If you don't have authority to arrest someone for doing that, I don't know how you have the authority to wield a weapon. I don't think the fact that he's driving on the shoulder is as big a deal as the county attorney is trying to make out of it, trying to portray him as some sort of evil person. And I do have good reasons to think that these people are liars, because there's no way you knew he's driving fast on the shoulder. It's a passenger. Who the hell's a passenger is looking around and you don't have a rear view mirror. What the hell? How would you even know? Stupid. You big fat stupid. So yes, I do think that this is a political hit job, but that doesn't mean that they don't have enough here, that the officer didn't overstep his bounds by brandishing a weapon. And he admits that he pulled his weapon out. So I think that this is now a question of fact. And I do think that's a reasonably fair judge would be like, I don't think the supremacy clause is going to keep you from facing a jury. Now, in the jury instruction charges, they'll say, if you think he was in the performance of his duty, then you must let him. You can't, do you think a jury's going to come to that conclusion? I doubt it. Then you must let him. So that's how I'm seeing this case right now. Calling a spade a spade. I'm going to let you know, in case you're looking at the at the goal that I said that since tonight is a law show, I'm going to be giving full credit for any super chats, rants. If it's $20, I'm giving full credit. Hands went back saying, I bet the two that blocked him have anti-ICE protest connections. I'm be shocked if they didn't. I'll tell you that. So I just want to give you a heads up because you can't see it if you're there, unless you're there. 20 from JH in locals and another 50 in the ghetto. Yes, thank you. 60, 70. So we're actually at 110. We're actually I'm counting as if we're at 11 super chats, even though it only says 4 out of 15. I'm counting as if we're 11. So we're really not that far away. We're not that far away. Who knows? Someday your prince may come, J.H. Schwalbach. We can only pray. All right. Should I put a goal up? I had a bunch of other things I wanted to talk to you about. This is where I should bring. And there you go. Go! Bless you, Brian. Bless you, Brian Oldenkamp. You're awesome, brother. Thank you very much. All right, goal met. There you go. There you go. All right. That was very nice. I had a bunch of other story topics to cover with you. Should we do that? Because I'm only an hour in. I feel as if it's 11:45. Maybe we'll cover one or two. Let's see what we got for you. I'm going to share with you what Jim gave me. So I was like, I really want to make tonight's show just about the law. And we did it. We did a good job there. I think that was something to be proud of. This is what he got. Former Virginia attorney got pushed for gun bans and red flags laws, kills wife and then himself. If you see a story, just tell me which number that you're like, this is the one. Joe, this is the one. I looked at some of the headlines on this. I was like, it's really not much hay I can make out of that. Number 2, U.S. Senate rejects 4th attempt to curb Trump's war powers in Iran. Yeah, that doesn't do anything. So basically, Democrats are screaming, we got to shut it down. And it failed. Okay. 2A, House Republicans narrowly reject effort to end Trump's war with Iran. Again, I think the vote was 214, 213 or something. It's not going to pass unless he signs it, which he obviously isn't. So it's all just for show. Number 3, USC is 26 here, in case you're wondering. If you see something, say something. This is the one you want me to cover. U.S. faces demand to restore $350 million in federal funding to help power Puerto Rico. Definitely have no interest there. 65th anniversary of Bay of Pigs. Tyrannical lower court judge, inferior judge, blocks construction of ICE. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk to you. Let's see. Of ICE detention facility in Maryland. Well, that could be interesting. What do we got? Judge blocks new Maryland ICE detention facility over concerns about sewage rushed planning. Baltimore judge has temporarily blocked ICE from turning a large warehouse near Hagerstown, Washington County, into a detention center. The controversial multi-million-dollar project is part of federal immigration enforcement efforts and would have housed hundreds of people, according to lawyers for DOJ, who fought in Baltimore federal courthouse Wednesday to allow retrofitting of the more than 800,000 square foot facility. The immigration facility in Washington County has sparked numerous concerns from state and local leaders, along with lawsuit from the Maryland Attorney General's office. This preliminary injunction is a major and welcome step forward, Maryland Governor Wes Moore said. You big fat stupid. Construction on this proposed facility remains halted pending litigation, which is critical to protecting the community's environment, public safety, health, and long-term economic stability. You're so full of crap. You're so full of crap. U.S. District Judge Brendan Herson, a Biden appointee, was critical of government's stance during the hearing. He called the costs exorbitant. Who cares? It's not your business. It's not your business. So what? None of that is your business. These stupid woke judges, I'm so sick of it, was rushed and could be environmentally damaging. Then what is happening here? There's a bigger picture of this case, and the court is not blind to that fact. The court should be blind to that fact because the cost is not anything you're supposed to be thinking about at all. How is that part of your legal calculus? The hearing hinged on sewage of the facility, with lawyers from Maryland's Attorney General arguing the current sewage system could not handle hundreds of detainees. If Trump wants to spend $1 trillion building a facility, it's not for this judge to decide yes or no. Government said they plan to hold 542 people at the facility, even though initial documents showed up to 1,500 people could be housed there. 542 sounds like a specific number. How did they come up with that? Why are you asking these questions? They don't have an DOJ lawyers didn't have an answer. Of course they don't have an answer because they're like, why the hell would you be asking a question like that? How is that a legal question? These are fact questions. What is happening? These people are so sickening. How can you say with a straight face that 4 toilets in the warehouse is the same as you would have with 542 people? Goldstein said the state was also concerned about damage to green floater mussels that thrive nearby. But what about the mussels? What about the floater mussels? Won't anyone think of the floater mussels? Oh my God. DOJ lawyer Sean Duffy said ICE is committed to engage in environmental analysis. Haley Carpenter, another lawyer for the government, told Judge Herson, if ICE isn't able to get the warehouse operational, it will have to forgo arrests. And that's what they're hoping for. Carpenter claimed there were more than 5,000 immigrants in Maryland with criminal records. ICE is attempting to do the right thing here to create its own detention center, she said. This facility will provide a safe, secure detention space close to detainees' family and legal counsel. Yeah, well, don't you want them close to their family? You want us to ship them out to, like, Louisiana? Then you can start whining that they're in Louisiana? Anyhow. Warehouses aren't for people. It's loonies. They miss the 60s. They really miss the 60s. Oh, okay. So let's I had enough of that story. As we're going around the world. We're going around the world. Tyrant judge who tried to halt White House ballroom construction allows national security work to proceed but limits all other work. I don't know why it is with respect. There are 2 stories that have been going on a lot over the last 3 months that I don't care about at all. One of them is Artemis, the Artemis space mission. I just don't care about it. You can't make me wanna. I don't care about Artemis. And number 2 is this ballroom. To me, I so don't care about this whole ballroom. I don't care if it gets built. I don't care if it doesn't get built. I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to know about the ballroom. How is the ballroom affecting your life or mine? None of us care. It's a big, beautiful, it's the biggest ballroom you've ever seen. DH worker and another woman killed in a series of attacks in Atlanta area. What's this? What's this? DHS employee killed while walking a dog. Suspect arrested. Lauren Bullis. at the Green Meadows Preserve in Cobb County in 2025. A U.S. Department of Homeland Security employee was shot and stabbed to death while walking her dog by a UK naturalized citizen with a criminal record. Lauren Bullis was identified as the victim in an April 15 post on X by DHA Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. Brookhaven police in Georgia said they arrested and charged. What? What is this? What is that? What is that? What am I supposed to do with that? Tell me how I pronounce that. Tell me how I'm supposed to pronounce this word. Olalu Kutat Gitan Adan Abel, 26 of Atlanta on April 13th. Another angry white man. On April 13th, for a series of attacks that killed 2 women and seriously injured a man, Abel was charged with aggravated assault and possession of firearm during the commission of a felony. Brookhaven is about 10 miles northeast of Atlanta. Mullen said it's supposed that Abel was born in the UK and naturalized by the Biden administration in 2022. Of course he was. Since President Donald Trump took office, U.S. citizenship and ICE and Immigration Services has implemented measures to ensure individuals with criminal histories and who otherwise lack good moral character do not attain citizenship. Abel had a prior criminal record that included convictions for sexual battery against a police officer, obstruction, vandalism, and assault with a deadly weapon, according to Mullen. Naturally. Of course he did. You know, the left loves to cry about how the Statue of Liberty says, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. And I'll admit that I think that's bunk. And that's just a stupid gift that came from France. That's not a credo for the United States. So I don't care about that. But they actually read it as, give us your psychopaths, your lunatics, your deranged monsters who can't fit anywhere into any other society. Police went to suburban Atlanta shopping center after reports of a person being shot around 2 a.m. Police said found a 49-year-old man suffering from gunshot wounds. The man was taken to hospital in critical condition, according to police. Mullen said the man was homeless outside Kroger's grocery and that the other woman killed was shot outside the supermarket Checkers. Described the shooting of the homeless man as random. And Abel was involved allegedly in other shootings. So I don't think this is DHS related. It's not like this was an attack on DHS the way this is being portrayed. Murder sparked criticism from Republicans. The murder of Lauren Bullis is exactly why we need to expand denaturalization. Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri said on X, her murderer, Adon Abel, oh, he can't pronounce the first name either. He can't even spell it. He's like, I can't even copy and paste that. It's too long. What was that name again? Ola Glukatan Kitan. Adon Abel had a lengthy and violent rap sheet. He was naturalized under Biden to expand denaturalization, or this will keep happening. I'm going to tell you right now, this is what I really want to talk to you about. And this is actually important. This I know is important. And it relates to what I was just reading to you. Do you know how many, I meant to cover this. I had put it aside a week or two ago when the Supreme Court was talking about birthright citizenship. This came out a day or two later. Do you know how many people China has sent here to give birth in the United States, brought them back home, and raised them to be part of the CCP? Do you have any idea? Any idea? Without looking it up. Don't look it up. Any idea how many people they have? I'm looking for numbers. I'll wait. At least 100,000? Yeah, now you're getting there. Now you're getting there. What? Oh no, I don't sound anything like Kermit. Let's see what number Grok gives us. Let's see what number Grok gives us. I heard it's well over 1 million. They have like thousands of agencies that are designed to send people here just to give birth and go back and become basically servants of the Chinese state. There's an army of American citizens who've never set foot in America for more than like a week after they were born. Grok, I'm going to urge you not to be all stupid leftist on me for a minute, okay?
Fair enough. Shoot, what's on your mind?
I want to talk to you about the Chinese program to send pregnant women to America to give birth, become American citizens, and then raise those children in China.
It's real. Wealthy Chinese families pay 40 to 100 grand for maternity hotel packages, housing, medical care, fake tourist visas, so their kid gets automatic U.S. citizenship under the 14th Amendment. The child grows up in China, holds a U.S. passport, and at 21 can sponsor the whole family for green cards. That chain migration piece is the big long-term play. The scale? Hundreds of agencies in China advertise it. Federal busts in California show organized ops wiring millions back home. Some estimates float hundreds of thousands over the years. One recent claim even said 1.5 million such kids total, though that's probably high. Northern Mariana Islands has become another hotspot. U.S. soil, easier access. It's not some secret CCP master plan in every case. A lot of it is rich parents wanting their kids' education and travel options here, or a hedge against China's problems. But when it involves officials or connected families, and no one's tracking who these citizens really are, yeah, it smells like exploiting a loophole the founders never imagined for this. What part of it you want to dig into?
So it's a fair estimate to say there's at least 1 million of these people, right?
No, not a fair estimate. The big 1.5 million figure comes from Peter Schweizer and a congressional letter citing Chinese media and Breitbart. It assumes 100,000 Chinese births a year for over a decade, but U.S. data shows only about 100 to 270 births a year officially to non-resident Chinese mothers, with total birth tourism
Grok,
estimates
stop
from
talking.
the Center for Immigration. Okay.
We started this conversation with me telling you not to be a crazy leftist. How many agencies are advertising this service?
Dozens, easily. Back when they were tracking it, Chinese websites had over 200 agencies openly advertising maternity tourism packages.
If there's
to the
200
US.
agencies openly and investing money in advertising maternity tourism packages in the United States, why would you come up to a conclusion that there's a mere 200 to 400 people coming here? You think that they're collectively sending 1 or 2 people a year? Each of them? How stupid does that sound?
You're right. That math doesn't add up. If 200 agencies are advertising and taking big fees, they're not running empty planes. The low official numbers, a couple hundred births a year, only capture what's on hospital records. The real numbers got to be higher, because a lot of these women come in on tourist visas, deliver, and the birth isn't always flagged as tourism in the stats. But going from that to 1 million plus citizens still requires a massive leap. It assumes sustained high volume for 10 to 15 years without the U.S. noticing huge spikes in Chinese births. The honest read is the true number is probably in the tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. Agencies can stay profitable on 5 to 10 clients a month each, not hundreds. The scale is real, the loophole's real, but the million figure doesn't hold up without better data.
Why would you assume it's so few per year?
I don't assume it's few. The Center for Immigration Studies, using actual U.S. birth certificate and census data, estimates around 20,000 to 36,000 total birth tourism babies a year from from all countries combined. Chinese sources and raids back in 2012-2015 put Chinese numbers around 10,000 a year, maybe up to 20K at peak. That's not 1 or 2 per agency. With 200 to 500 agencies, it works out to dozens of clients each per year, perfectly profitable at 50 to 100 grand a pop. The million-plus claims come from Peter Schweizer saying 100K Chinese a year for 13 years, based on Chinese media. That would mean almost every birth tourist on Earth is Chinese, which the hospital and census data just doesn't show. No one tracks it perfectly, but the hard US numbers cap it way below that.
And I think that's a fair counterpoint as far as, we have our hard US birth numbers. We sort of have an idea as to where people are from, their parents are from, in these hard US birth numbers. But frankly, it's not simply the CCP that we need to be concerned about. Russia doing this or Islamic State's doing this. Any country that's doing this, that's purposefully setting up a birthing tourism is something that is horrifying. They're basically trying to dilute you. That's what this is about. They're trying to dilute you, your significance as an American citizen. This is one of the things that we don't fully appreciate, because when you're born with something, much like someone who's born with a lot of money cannot appreciate money, we who are privileged to be born with the genuine privilege of being an American citizen do not fully, it's not even do not fully, we don't by a light year appreciate the magnitude of that and significance of that particular blessing. All of the blessings of having freedom of speech, the blessings of living in a country where you have an opportunity you have boundless opportunities to grow as on an individual level, boundless opportunities to raise your personal finances in ways that do not exist anywhere else on earth. Your right to vote, all of these things, the social guarantees, the socials that come from being an American citizen, whether it's welfare, whether it's housing, education, medicine, all of these different blessings that we have here in this country, that people are basically saying, oh, if I drop $30,000, I can just have my kid have those blessings for the rest of their life. It's an investment in the kid. And we're talking now about, and potentially this being weaponized. Some people have concerns, and I don't think they're completely misguided concerns. Quite the contrary, I think there's logic to it that this is being orchestrated by state agencies purposefully in order for them to help control a vote. In order to help swamp the vote when they want to. So these are very, very, very real concerns that, frankly, I think we don't worry about enough. I think it was Mike Lee who alerted me to this thing. Let me see if I think it was Mike Lee. Mike Lee. Well, a
California woman has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for her role in birth tourism and a scheme for birth tourism. That's where she helped Chinese women travel to the United States to deliver their babies so that they would automatically become American citizens.
What happened really beginning in 2011 and continuing to this day, the Chinese Communist Party has run articles in the People's Daily, other places, explaining to the Chinese elite that, hey, the American 14th Amendment says if your child is born in the United States, fly there. You know, people in China will pay $60,000 or so. They will fly to the United States, the pregnant mother. They will lie on their visa application. That's where these criminal charges come into place. They say we're not going to have a child. We're just here as tourists. They give birth here. They're given the birth certificate. They fly back to China where the child will be raised in China.
Well, a California woman has been sentenced to more than 3 years.
Well, Mike Lee shared out just 3 days ago. This is a serious problem. I mean, and it really could be well over 1 million people. We don't know. We have no way of knowing. We need tens of thousands of Russians of any nationality. Why would they not be doing that? You think the Chinese people have like a billion? There's 1 billion Chinese people. You think that they wouldn't be encouraging them to, hey, if we can get our own, we can basically vote in the American elections. we can get like 1 million votes, 10 million votes in American elections. Why would they not do that? Why would they not sponsor that? Why would they not promote that? Why would they not push that? This is a very, very serious problem. So I just want to call your attention to it. Anyway. Zelian says, Joe, something no one's talking about is how we're now 100% control of China. Oh, look at this. I didn't even notice this when you shared this out. Let's see what he got. There's a 2-mile strait in their waters between them and Singapore that 70% of China's oil goes through, including the oil from Iran. You know, I actually saw this. Someone tagged me and shared a link to a video by Jillian Michaels, which I sat there just astonished by the amount of information I was processing during this 37-minute video that I highly recommend. I highly recommend, because I was like, wow. I actually want to watch it a second time. Should we do it? Should we do it? I never saw Jillian before, but I was just astonished. But this was Zelian sharing with us. Secretary of War Pete Hegg says, welcome his Indonesian counterpart, Defense Minister Sejare, I don't know, Jamzodin, to the Pentagon today, where the two men announced establishing a major defense cooperation partnership. The partnership will serve as a framework to advance bilateral defense cooperation between the U.S. and Indonesia in order to maintain peace and stability throughout the Indo-Pacific region. Your visit demonstrates the importance that the War Department places in our growing security relationship and is active and growing with Indonesia, X told. You gotta do this to me again? Shamsodin. Just before noting that the two countries complete more than 170 military exercises together each year. The partnership signifies the strength and potential of our secure relationship, bolsters regional deterrence, advances our shared commitment to peace through strength. During his brief remarks, Jamzodin affirmed Hegg's sentiment regarding the strength of the U.S.-Indonesia relationship. I'm not seeing how this is related to what you were talking about. I don't think this is the right link. I don't think this is the link you meant to send me. Because I don't really care about Indonesia. No offense. I just don't. So I'm gonna pull the cord on this one here. Joe, it's called Chinese takeout. Everyone loves Chinese takeout. Yes, Joe, we really need to watch that video. It was an awesome breakdown. People might just appreciate Trump. I don't know if I can watch the whole thing. I don't want to watch the whole thing. You should watch the whole thing. It was a good enough video that I was like, all right, I'm subscribing to this woman now. Here's a shorter version, which is just 5 minutes long.
What if I told you that the iMac is just one small piece of a much larger picture? The corridor is the railroad, but what Trump built around it is the railroad company.
So she brings this in here. It's a little too confusing to start there. It's the middle of like a longer 37-minute thing. Let me see if I can find that a little faster. This is nice.
What if the real reason behind the Iran war isn't being discussed anywhere? Not the nukes, not the proxies. Those are real and they've been real for decades. So why now? Why this moment? Well, because the world was on the verge of a fundamental shift in how energy and trade move across the planet. And the people who position themselves at the center of that shift before it happens, well, they're going to collect the toll forever. Trump and his inner circle are positioned at that center, not as soldiers, not as diplomats, but as developers, as financiers, as the men who hold the insurance, control the infrastructure, and own the waterfront. The war didn't interrupt the plan. The war is the plan. This one changes everything, guys. Here's the story behind the story on the Iran war. Keeping it real with Jillian Michaels. They want us to believe that this is a war about ancient grudges and territorial disputes, nuclear encroachment and terror proxies, and I see it. I see all of it. But here's what I don't see. I just don't think that Iran was days away from a nuke, and there's no universe where Donald Trump was blindsided by Iran leveraging the Strait of Hormuz. They've threatened. And
this is obviously true, right? I mean, we heard about how they blew up their nukes. So I didn't think this, I mean, it could be that what J.D. Vance was telling us is spot on. I mean, there's some logic to what he was saying. They were creating their interballistic missiles for the purposes of safeguarding them, that if they start trying to develop nukes, that we can't stop them without suffering serious damage. So, okay, that makes sense. But what she's describing here is basically an economic takeover of the energy industry and totally stripping that away from Iran forever as to like where the world gets its energy. And some of it was so confusing, what she was describing here, that I actually had to do research to like look into IMEC and how energy, something she talks about here is how data is energy. Like, you know, data like your computer could be converted into energy. Which I was just like, what? So you wouldn't need oil anymore. You would just need data. And that gets converted into energy. And I was just like, is that even real? What? What does that mean? How would that work? I don't understand how that works. I don't understand anything about this. So I did some research on that. I'm not going to try and break that part down for you because I think I understand it.
It for decades. And like it or not, his strategic prowess has surprised me time and time again. Every time I think this guy is insane, his master plan reveals itself, whether it's Greenland or Venezuela, whether it's the tariffs or the Panama Canal. So there is just no universe where Trump and the people surrounding him, from Gabbard to Rubio, did not warn him about the strait, which leads me to believe he didn't underestimate how this would play out. He counted on it playing out this way. So the team and I began digging into what's been going on behind the scenes, and there is definitely a much bigger picture unfolding. Trump's Board of Peace and the future of energy and trade as we know it. I am talking about the death of the choke point and power far beyond fossil fuels.
The choke point being the Strait of Hormuz, because with so much oil going out to the world from the Strait of Hormuz, you have Oman, you have Qatar, you have Iran, that area, any country which decides to become hostile and control, who goes in and out of there, basically holds the world captive from, and the energy prices in oil basically can skyrocket overnight. And how Trump has basically been positioning America, and frankly himself, to oversee that forever, long after he's out of the office.
It's going to blow your mind. Now, before I show you Trump's long-term strategy, I want to start with the obvious, okay? A deal with Iran would have been awesome. But so far, it hasn't come to pass, unsurprisingly. So Trump did something bolder. The U.S. Navy closed the Strait of Hormuz. In a single move, Iran lost everything. No more extortion fees from targeted tankers, no oil exports, no income. And this may go down as one of the greatest strategic miscalculations in modern history, and Iran made it.
And this is true. This is true. It seems as if this was a gross miscalculation by Iran. That they were like, well, if we start charging people tolls of $2 million per ship that comes through here, in that case, and we're threatened that we're going to basically be attacking your ships as they're going through the Strait of Hormuz, unless, you're paying us our tolls, we're basically controlling energy throughout the world. And once they had threatened to do that many, many times, and now they actually did it, and Trump was like, F you, I'm making a block. You think you're controlling the strait? No. I'm not letting your ships out. Your ships aren't going anywhere. You're not going to be able to ship out your oil.
Because the country that needs the strait the most is Iran. But the pressure didn't stop there. So closing the strait was also a message to China and U.S. allies alike. Your energy supply now runs through American decisions. Play ball or else. And Trump has said repeatedly, the U.S. doesn't depend on the strait for oil or liquid natural gas. So his offer to allies was simple. Help.
And he basically saw that, hey, we don't really need the strait. We can get our own oil without the Persian Gulf. We don't need it. So, we can basically screw over the rest of the world if, in fact, we were so inclined.
Open it, buy your energy from us, or do both. And most countries scoffed at him at first. And then guess what? They found themselves with no real choice. So within weeks, a coalition of roughly 20 nations has formed, including the UK, France, Germany, Japan, Australia, the UAE, and Italy, to do, guess what? Open the strait. And then oil tankers began rerouting straight towards the United States. A couple hundred super tankers, each with the ability to carry up to 2 million barrels, reverse course from the Middle East, and they are now converging on the U.S. Gulf Coast. American oil exports have surged to record levels, jumping an estimated 5.2 million barrels per day, with shipments climbing across Europe, Asia, and Africa. Gulf Coast refineries are running at 95% capacity. And that revenue isn't flowing to Tehran, it's flowing into the American economy. Now, this certainly doesn't solve everything, but it buys time. So while Trump leans on Iran, he has been working to buffer the hit that Americans take from the global oil price spike, essentially decoupling the U.S. energy market from the rest of the world. So he's released record amounts of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to keep gas prices in check, temporarily lifted Jones Act restrictions so foreign tankers can move oil between U.S. ports more freely, and pushed domestic fuel production and refining through the One Big Beautiful Bill 2025. The result, U.S. gas prices have held steady at roughly $3.60 to $4.15 per gallon, even as global oil prices have surged past $120 per barrel. So
the point is that he saw that the prices were going to skyrocket, did everything he could to make it not as painful at the pump as possible. It still is a little bit painful, but considering how high oil has skyrocketed, that it's not been hitting America as nearly as hard as it's been hitting the rest of the world.
Part of our conversation. Now, here's where this starts to get bananas. Trump has also used the Iran war to pitch allied energy security, essentially asking the world to trade their reliance on Iranian geography for a reliance on American infrastructure by investing in our energy-led projects like the Alaska LNG project. But that is just a tiny part of what is seemingly the much broader agenda. What if the goal all along was to force a migration of global trade from a vulnerable maritime system controlled by ideological lunatics to one controlled by a stable private equity managed system that Trump and co are in charge of?
I'm going to dumb this down for you because when she's talking, so what she's basically saying is, look, we've been relying on these lunatic Islamofascist crazies who are always threatening to blow up the world for our energy for a long time. Trump is trying to create a new system where the entire world is no longer reliant on Iran or whichever lunatic ends up coming in to take over Iran theoretically, where instead we're going to have basically find an alternative path to have our energy provided without relying on oil from the Persian Gulf.
Now, as I mentioned, everyone's known for decades that whoever controls the Strait of Hormuz controls the world's jugular. 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every day, a fifth of everything the planet burns. And Iran doesn't need to win a war to bring the global economy to its knees. It just needs to close a 21-mile bottleneck. Well, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have spent billions in anticipation.
So basically, and you know, that bottleneck there at the Strait of Hormuz, you don't even have to close it. Because if you're threatening that you're going to be blowing up ships, no one's going through there.
Attempting to build 2 escape hatches. So the UAE built the ADCOP pipeline, pumping oil directly to.
So what you're seeing here basically is a little bit hard because she pulls this up very quickly, but that the UAE has built this pipeline over here, which bypasses this over here on the top part of the map. You can't really tell is the Strait of Hormuz. So instead of having to go through this bottleneck at the top here, they come out at this point. So if we actually look at I'll put a picture of the Strait of Hormuz for you, because when she's doing this, she talks quickly. It's a ton of information, like really important information. That's not a good picture. So this part over here is the bottleneck. So instead, they built a railway to basically come out over here beyond the bottleneck and then go into the Gulf of Oman, which Iran is not capable of really controlling. They can control this part over here where it's really narrow, but over here, they can't. So that's why they basically built this train to pipeline the oil out to the Gulf of Oman and be able to send it out to the east, to the Far East.
Fujairah, which is a port sitting outside the strait in open water beyond Iran's reach. And Saudi Arabia built the Petrol Line, which is a 750-mile pipeline that cuts across the desert to Yanub on the Red Sea, bypassing the Persian Gulf entirely.
So basically, that pipeline is coming from here and just saying, all right, to hell with the damn Persian Gulf. We can't come through here. Instead, let's just pipe our oil out to the Red Sea and come out this way. So this way we don't have to worry about Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz.
Yanub on the Red Sea, bypassing the Persian Gulf entirely. Now, both pipelines combined, however, max out at about 9 million barrels a day, which is less than half of what the strait carries. But Iran didn't just close the strait, they hunted the alternatives. Drones hit Fujairah on March 3rd. The UAE bypass went offline by the 14th. Strikes on the Saudi pumping stations choked the petrol line shortly after. And even a working petrol line leads straight into another trap. So to reach the west of the world, tankers leaving Saudi Arabia have to pass through the Bab el Mandeb, which is an 18-mile choke point between Yemen and Africa. And that coastline belongs to the Houthis. So on March 28th, those guys entered the war. And as we've already seen with Iran and the Strait, you don't need to win a naval battle to stop oil shipping. You just need to make the water feel super duper dangerous. And they were happy to oblige. So the escape hatches were sealed. And it got worse.
So Saudi Arabia's whole plan to go through the Red Sea didn't work because the Houthis are in the way there.
The Suez Canal, which carries 15% of global trade and nearly a third of all container shipping between Asia and Europe, sits at the northern end of that same Red Sea.
So it starts up here. They also are coming down to the Red Sea, and then they have to go past the Houthis. So that's a problem too.
The canal itself wasn't under attack, but it doesn't matter. Every ship heading for Suez has to run the Houthi gauntlet first. So for the first time in modern history, okay, every major route that connects the Gulf to the global economy was compromised at once. Now, here's the catch. With these fragile maritime shipping routes having failed under the pressure of Iranian drones, a different kind of infrastructure was already laying in wait. Behold, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, otherwise known as the IMEC, a seamless railroad and shipping link connecting Mumbai to Dubai through the Saudi and Jordanian deserts, terminating at the port of Haifa in Israel, and then finally into Europe. Now,
so understand this. So basically now India is able to ship over here. This is just outside of the Strait of Hormuz. It's on the west, it's on the eastern side of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's close, it's on this side over here. And then by rail, be able to get it across the Saudi Arabian deserts, across Lebanon and into Haifa here, which is a city in northern Israel, and then shipped out from Haifa to Greece. This is through the Mediterranean. Now, this is actually interesting because I noticed, excuse me, during the conflict in the summer between Iran and when Iran was bombing Israel, there was a lot of bombing going toward Haifa. And I was very confused. I was like, I know Haifa is a city in Israel. I understand that. Tel Aviv, you expect that's where Gazans are always aiming their bombs at Tel Aviv. Jerusalem, you would think, okay, Jerusalem, they don't really want to strike. It's just like there's a whole bunch of cities you can go after. Why Haifa? Why Haifa? And this explains why it would be Haifa. Because Haifa is basically it's a transponder point for this route of running fuel from the Middle East out to Europe. And that's why they basically like it's a way of trying to punish Haifa for that.
this was initially masterminded by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2021. The IMEC grew out of a think tank referred to as the I2U2, which represented India and Israel, the UAE, and the United States. And they wanted to build alternatives to vulnerable trade routes. So for India, the motivation was personal, right? Because Pakistan blocks its land access west, which cuts it off from direct overland trade to the Middle East and Europe. IMEC creates the workaround. Now, it also hedges against three bigger threats.
So again, when she's talking, you sort of can't picture a map because we're not familiar with Middle East, right? But basically, what she's trying to explain here, here's Pakistan over here. So India basically can't ship things through Pakistan because they're always fighting with each other. And that's why instead of having to worry about shipping over the land, they basically are shipping via sea this way. That's what she was essentially getting at over there.
Hormuz, where Iran has always had the power to hold the world's energy supply hostage. IMEC, the ultimate solution. A land corridor that's designed to make maritime choke points obsolete. Not just for today's energy trade, but for the next generation of it. Now, it's built on 3 pillars: transportation, energy, and digital infrastructure. It integrates rail and maritime networks, undersea electricity cables, fiber optic lines, and digitized customs platforms into a single seamless corridor. The promise: 40% faster trade times, 30% lower costs, and an alternative route immune to hostile governments, piracy, and war. Now, if you're thinking you can't...
So basically, what you have here is it's cheaper and it's safer. So, and it's less dependent on some lunatic deciding that they're going to just start blowing things up. So that's a lot of reasons to motivate people to say, hey, you know what, we're tired of dealing with all these conflicts. And what she's basically getting at here, I'm going to start landing my plan on this. I'm not going to watch the entire 37-minute video with you. But what she's basically getting at here is the objective is that now Europe and the West has options, has this IMEC as a potential as a potential alternative method of getting its energy, while not without being subject to the lunacy of the Middle East. I mean, relatively, I mean, because Saudi Arabia and Israel are far less lunatics than Iran. So that's essentially what it is, what this is about. And that this war, because Trump sort of tripped them into showing how fragile our shipping lanes are, that, hey, if they get mad, they're going to basically say, we're cutting off all your oil. Now the rest of the world has been encouraged to basically say, all right, we can't deal with this. We need energy consistently, and not, because someone's in a bad mood that we're going to get punished for it. So what Trump has essentially done through the war is motivate the rest of the world to recognize we don't want to be dependent on the Persian Gulf anymore. So let's look for an alternative, and here's IMEC for you.
Ship oil via IMEC, you're right. Crude moves in volumes that are too massive for rail, but IMEC is built around what can move efficiently by land: high-value refined products like diesel, jet fuel, and petrochemicals that are shipped in standardized tank containers. So think smart shipping containers for liquids, stackable, trackable, and seamlessly transferable between rail and port. Gulf refineries bypass the strait entirely and deliver fuel directly to Mediterranean ports like Haifa on demand. But refined fuels are just the beginning. IMEC's most transformative feature is a transcontinental pipeline network purpose-built for hydrogen, the clean-burning fuel that powers everything from steel mills to chemical plants to electricity grids, and which Europe has staked its post-fossil fuel future on. So right now, Europe...
See how there's it's like a ton of information that she's dropping in, it's like bam, 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 bam. You almost feel as if you have to come in here with a background in the energy markets in order to understand what she's talking about. That's why I'm trying to break it down for you so you can digest everything that she's giving, because I assume that most people don't have 1/10 the background in the energy markets that she's displaying here. And so it's just sort of that's why I'm trying to just sort of help slow her down for you.
Imports most of its energy as liquefied natural gas, and that's a fossil fuel shipped on tankers from the Gulf. It's expensive, it's slow, and it's hostage to whatever waterway those tankers have to cross. IMEC offers the transition Europe has been waiting for: a direct pipeline delivering hydrogen from low-cost production hubs in Saudi Arabia and the UAE straight to European industrial centers. Cleaner fuel, no tankers, no choke points, no war-torn waterways. And
what she was explaining here, I actually had to look this up, that hydrogen apparently is converted into ammonia, which is far less dangerous to transport in large volume, and then can be turned back into hydrogen, and hydrogen is able to be used to fuel, countless countless different production manufacturing plants.
Alongside that, you've got high voltage undersea and overland electricity cables that allow Gulf nations to export their vast solar capacity straight into the European grid, moving energy as data rather than liquid that's invisible to naval mines and drone strikes. It's bananas, right? And after 2 years in development, Modi brought the plan to the G20 in September 20.
Okay, so I had to look this up because I was like, what the hell does that even mean? So you're going to transfer data through these cables, and that comes out as energy? And apparently that's a possible thing. I don't know what, when I tried understanding it, I'm not going to kid you. This was beyond my science knowledge. I was like, and I even said to Grok, explain it to me like I'm 10 years old. And even when they explain it to me like I'm 10, I'm like, no, I don't understand how this actually would work. That I'm going to transfer data to you, and you're going to use that data. I don't know what that means. I don't even know what that means. Yeah, the data thing is just, what the hell does that even mean? What does that mean? Like, why is it that one person would have better data? Why can't you just take any data? What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. It doesn't make any sense to me.
3, and that date matters. Now, he announced it to global fanfare as a new Silk Road connecting India to Europe through the Middle East. And then, 3 weeks later, October 7th
Yes,
happened.
it is.
And the project didn't just stall. It hit 3 huge walls simultaneously. First,
and what she's going to get at here is that the whole attack of October 7th was designed. I'm going to pass through this part. The attack of October 7th was basically like that Hamas, that we found data which shows that Iran notified Hamas that there was this meeting, and there's a plan for them to in like September of 2023 that we need you to get in the way of Israel because they're about to cement a deal with Saudi Arabia, which is going to be cutting into our dominance on the energy markets. So Iran wanted October 7th to basically be a stumbling block, because when you have this whole war going on between Israel and Gaza, who the hell wants to invest in that? They're gonna invest in an energy market that's running through Israel. Like, you'd be crazy to do that if you're a private investor. Insurance companies weren't even willing to touch it because they're like, what are we gonna do with this? There's nothing we can do. Like, we can't invest billions of dollars into infrastructure that could get blown up. So it becomes something that's just very, very, it's not viable. Because you can't insure it. You can't do anything with this. I'm going to skip past a little bit further to the Board of Peace here, because this is the part which is actually astonishing.
the UN was focused on one thing: ending the humanitarian crisis. Gaza was destroyed. Someone needed to rebuild it. The board offered to do it. But what the UN didn't...
So Trump created the Board of Peace. When he became president, he's like, okay, let's create this Board of Peace. And the Board of Peace, their job is to fix things, to help stabilize regions. The Board of Peace has its own army. And that army is financed and being supported by like 15 different nations. It's like a private army, not Americans, like different nations, like giving in, like, and it's overseen by the guy who basically is the head to train SEALs.
Fully reckoned with,
Navy SEALs.
or chose not to, was the geography. Because Gaza sits at the western terminus of the IMEC corridor. The entire land route from India to Europe ends at Gaza's Mediterranean coastline. A new port, a logistics hub, and whoever rebuilds Gaza controls that terminus. Whoever controls that terminus controls the gateway through which every container, every barrel of refined fuel, every hydrogen shipment moving through the IMEC enters Europe.
When I was thinking about the control of Gaza and how valuable that can be to have a casino there, I was thinking this is millions, hundreds of millions, billions. What she's describing here dwarfs that. we're talking about literally, something that's worth potentially trillions of dollars. Because now all of a sudden this is incredibly significant. I'm not saying that it alone is worth trillions. What I'm saying is you're talking about a deal which affects trillions of dollars, because all of a sudden now you're talking about controlling a major share of the global energy markets forever. I mean, what the hell kind of value do you put on that? So that's why now Gaza becomes a really critical thing. This explains to me why Saudi Arabia would be very interested in making sure Gaza is secure, because they stand to be making themselves trillions of dollars if they can actually have this operating without that. They don't have to deal with some lunatics in Iran.
By authorizing the board to rebuild Gaza, the UN handed it the keys to IMAC, not intentionally, but completely. And on January 22, 2026, the board's charter was signed at Davos, formally installing it as the operational authority over the post-war Middle East. And here's where it gets really interesting. The charter's stated mission on the Board of Peace isn't to rebuild Gaza. It's to promote stability and restore dependable governance and secure enduring peace in areas affected or threatened by conflict. I wonder, could that involve Iran? Well, that's not a Gaza mandate, right? It's a global one. And Trump has said openly that the board will eventually take on conflicts worldwide. Gaza was just the proof of concept. The architecture reflects that ambition from day.
You know who's the chairman of the Board of Peace? Donald Trump. For life. No one gets in or out. It's a club. You can't, in order to get into the Board of Peace, which oversees the security of this whole thing, Donald Trump, forever. And he gets to name his successor. So, because I guess he figures I'm 79, I'm going to have to name someone. But I guarantee you, it's going to be someone who's carrying his DNA.
One. And Trump, he's not the president of the board. He's the chairman for life.
And by the way, I will tell you, it's a little let's let her. It's a little scary. It's a little scary because we're talking about this man having ridiculous amounts of power. Ridiculous. Like he's basically the king of energy forever.
Charter gives him the sole authority to invite or remove member states, create or dissolve subsidiary bodies, break any vote, and name his own successor. No Security Council veto, no General Assembly override, no term limits. Now, over 60 countries were invited to the Board of Peace. 26 have come on board. To secure a permanent seat, member states have to contribute $1 billion. Some nations like Canada, they balked. Others are treating it as the membership fee for the new global economy. And guess who's on the executive board? Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Mark Rowan, Tony Blair. All of them, with the exception of Blair, investment bankers and real estate developers. And that's not a coincidence, because this was never purely a peace initiative. Here's how it actually works as a business. So while sitting on the board, executives direct where $17 billion in reconstruction funds flow. Kushner's firm, Affinity Partners, is simultaneously managing $6.2 billion or so from the exact Gulf states funding that reconstruction. Saudi Arabia alone pays him $25 million a year in management fees. And at Davos, Kushner unveiled his $30 billion new Gaza plan: ports, logistics hubs, industrial zones, and the centerpiece, a Dubai-style Mediterranean waterfront. The same investors his firm manages are the ones being pitched the returns. Administration officials promoted a Gaza supply system offering sovereign investors between 46% and 175% returns in the first year. One contractor submitted a plan guaranteeing 300% profits plus a 7-year monopoly over all trucking and logistics for the Board of Peace. So many people leave a doctor's.
So, yeah. Anyhow, the point that she's getting at here, and I think I'll include a link to this so you can actually slow it down, watch the rest of it for yourselves. I'm going to do that. I'll put that in the description here. I'll put it in the... And I will urge you to sub up to Jillian Michaels, because I think that she's clearly a very intelligent woman, and her team puts together. This is a phenomenal breakdown. This is the first I heard of her. I'm sure many of you had heard of her before. This is the first I heard of her. But yeah, the point here is that this war is basically this war helped trigger the world into saying that she talks about how the IMEC plan had stalled under Gaza, like with the whole fight that was happening in Gaza, that everything had stalled and stopped. But now, because of everything that happened with Iran, that they closed down the Strait and they closed down the Red Sea and everything is being closed down everywhere, it basically has motivated multiple countries to start getting on board with the concept of using IMEC, and IMEC is dependent on the Board of Peace in order to retain its stability. It's literally got its own little army who's overseen by the guy who trained Navy SEALs. I don't remember the general's name. But yeah, so that's what Trump has set up. So if you're a cynic, you want to say he set that up because this is basically setting himself up to having a ridiculous asset that's certainly worth more than the rest of his assets combined. It's not a crazy thought. It's not a crazy thought at all. At the same time, he's also bringing stability. It is fixing the problem. So I've often said about Bill Gates, said this many times here, that when Bill Gates was becoming so wealthy, I was like, this guy changed the world. People don't appreciate the home computer that he made, something that was, something functional and that everyone would have. It changed society. That if you're under 40, you cannot appreciate just how dramatically society changed because of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. So him becoming billionaire, it's like, you know what? The guy changed the world. So I don't have any, why would you have a problem with that? And this too is changing the world into being a more safe and structured place. I think it is making Trump, in theory, the king of energy forever. And something you can pass on to, I don't know, his son-in-law Jared, his daughter Ivanka, whoever he wants, can name his successor. But yeah, he's changing the world, no less than Bill Gates did. So that's what I got for you. I urge you to check that out. You'll thank me. J.H. Schwalbeck, Joe, you're going out strong tonight. I won't need my Viagra tonight. This is great. You're welcome. You're welcome. Wasn't that a great link? That was a great video. I saw it today, and I watched the whole thing. I was watching it in like double speed. I usually start in double speed. And then I was like, all right, let me slow this down to 1.5. And I ended up slowing to 1.25 and then rewatching parts of it because I was like, wait, what was this part here? What was this part? Because she starts talking about all these different trade routes. And I don't know anything about any of these trade routes. I was feeling incompetent. I was like, no, I want to know what I'm talking about here. Not because I planned on talking about it on the show. I just want to be able to, I want to comprehend all of this and know exactly and understand what's motivating all these different players, like Russia and their K2 pipeline. Like you start to understand what their thinking is. And when you appreciate just how significant the dollars are and the necessity for these for energy is, you can really appreciate just the magnitude of motivation that these countries have to ensure that their systems of obtaining energy or delivering it are secure. So there you go. There you go. 7% chance goes through, including off from Iran. Kappa Sue says they're mad Trump is turning a basketball court into a ballroom. I remember when Clinton turned an intern into a humidor. Someone says, Joe, what? That means is if there's a war with, say, Taiwan or any other place, we can cut off 70% of their oil, starving not only their military, but their people. It's true. She's talking about something very different. What I'm talking about is what China Uncensored was talking about. I should watch it offline. How Trump has China cornered. Okay. I appreciate that, brother. I got the link here. All right. Well, God willing, I will be back here on Saturday night because you guys came out strong, particularly Brian Oldenkamp. Thank you, my brother, for basically nailing down and ensuring that we were going to have a show on Saturday night. So I will see you all then. Make sure you have a phenomenal weekend. Lab meat. Stay away from it. It's just going to make you rich. It's never meant for you. It's not compatible with your body. It's meant for they, them. It's not meant for you. And do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Have a good night, everyone. And as always, Godspeed.